Let's be brutally honest. We've been fed a lie. A persistent, pervasive, and profoundly comforting lie. The lie of progress. That things are undeniably better. That we've unequivocally moved on. That history, with all its mess and its lessons, is firmly in our rearview mirror. But what if that progress is merely a costume history, wears to hide its true and changing face? What if our celebration of advancement is nothing more than just a collective delusion? Because when we strip away the comforting narratives, when you expose the hidden agendas and the convenient omissions, you're left with an undeniable, terrifying truth. Progress, divorced from truth, is not just an illusion. It is the foundation of our perpetual blindness. And today, we are tearing down the blinds. Welcome back to Empowerment Junction. And thank you so much for joining with me through this powerful series, Debunking the Lies. Now, over the past few episodes, we've systematically peeled back layers of deception. The narratives we've been told and often taught to accept about education, about women's health, particularly Black women's health, about economic equity and social class. We've challenged the comfortable fictions one by one. Today, we close this chapter with a truth so profoundly silenced, so deliberately buried, it demands our full attention, our full unwavering attention. This isn't an end, but rather a beginning. Because truth, when truly faced, possesses an undeniable power to set us free. You've heard me challenge narratives before. Today, we confront one that was not just forgotten, but actively, systematically erased from the American consciousness. The Tulsa Race Massacre. The very name evokes a chilling paradox, an event of unimaginable violence followed by decades of deafening silence and calculated erasure. But this isn't just a historical footnote. More than a horrific memory, it's a mirror. A mirror held up to the very system that continues to betray and fail Black communities, not just in America, but across the globe. Today, we link the echoes of Tulsa to the systemic injustices that ripple through Black communities worldwide, discussing how such massacres, whether violent or insidious, impact lives, livelihoods, and legacies. This mirror reflects the deep, persistent, and painful consequences of racial injustice. Consequences that stretch from the burning streets of Greenwood in 1921 right into the fabric of American society and the global Black diaspora in 2025. This is not merely history to be recounted. This is our present, undeniable reality, and it's a lie. A big fat lie, a foundational lie we can no longer afford to live with. It's time to finally see, to truly understand, and to confront the truth that transcends borders and generations. Before Tulsa became synonymous with terror, it was home to Greenwood. Greenwood was a prosperous African American community known as Black Wall Street. The Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was a thriving African American community in the earliest 20th century, with a vibrant cultural scene, successful businesses, and a strong sense of community. It was home to many African American professionals, including doctors, lawyers, and entrepreneurs, and was seen as a model of self-sufficiency and economic success. However, this success and independence was a source of resentment for many white residents of Tulsa, who resented the fact that African Americans in Greenwood were thriving despite the discrimination and segregation that existed in other parts of the city. This resentment was a contributing factor to the violence that erupted during the Tulsa Massacre. Now, the massacre began with the arrest of a young African American man named Dick Rowland, who was accused of assaulting a white woman in an elevator. The arrest of Dick Rowland was the trigger for the events that led to the Tulsa Massacre. Rowland, a 19-year-old, was accused of assaulting Sarah Page, a white elevator operator in the Drexel building in downtown Tulsa. The details of what happened in the elevator are unclear, but Rowland was arrested and taken to the Tulsa County Courthouse. Rumors began to spread that he would be lynched, and a group of African American men, many of them World War I veterans, went to the courthouse to protect him. Now, the arrival of the armed African American men at the courthouse was met with hostility from a white mob that had gathered there, and tensions quickly escalated. Shots were fired, and the African American men retreated to the Greenwood district. The white mob then descended on Greenwood, looting and burning homes and businesses. Now, I suppose, let me just pause here. Let's imagine this. Let's consider this for a minute before I move on, before I carry on. If a single unsubstantiated rumor, a lie, could serve as the trigger for such widespread destruction, the deliberate silencing of history and the profound generational trauma we are discussing, what does it reveal about the dangerous architecture of fear and fabricated narratives that still threaten to divide and destroy communities, both here in America and across the global Black diaspora even today? Tulsa wasn't just forgotten, it was deliberately erased. Not in textbooks, omitted in textbooks. Local papers downplayed it. Survivors were silenced by fear and shame. And here's the link to our earlier episodes. This kind of erasure is no accident, no. It's what we saw in our conversations about education inequality. It's what we saw when knowledge is filtered through racism, through class, through entire history is just poof, vanished. Just like the lies that keep Black women's pain invisible. Tulsa's massacre, was hidden from textbooks and public memory. This erasure is a tool of oppression, keeping us from seeing the full truth of America's racial violence. Now, Tulsa wasn't the end, it was a blueprint. The destruction of Black wealth in Greenwood deepened the racial wealth gap that still exists today. Now, let's unpack the real reason, or the reason behind the destruction of the Greenwood success. The black people were thriving economically, socially, and the Greenwood district became a symbol of their wealth, success, and pride. However, their success was pricking in many eyes. Where have we had this tale before? Where have we had this before? The racially jealous were already trying to find means to destroy their successful city within a city and to end their rise. However, among other reasons, the primary reason they cite was that a 19-year-old black boy offended a 17-year-old white female elevator attendant. The local newspapers presented the story in a much hyped way and drummed it for days that stirred the rage in the whites. When the law was an option and dealing with one man could have solved the problem, the white men were hell-bent on the destruction of the Greenwood to uproot their success forever. Forever. Get this. Now the attack on the Black Wall Street in Greenwood on the 31st of May 1921 was carried on for 18 hours, 1/8 of brutal killing, brutal raping, destruction, and the burning of valuable buildings across Black Wall Street that resulted in enormous loss of human and wealth. The massacre left an indelible mark on the minds of the black people whose near ones were killed and left homeless. Now check this. Check this. When the girl was investigated about the case, she told the police that the boy only held her hand and nothing more happened, and that she didn't want to sue him for that. And we take a deep breath, because here is where it gets even more interesting. The law enforcement, the government was involved. The government was involved in Greenwood massacre. Because the attack was not only on the ground, but they also employed airplanes to target the business blocks of Black Wall Street. 15 airplanes came to the attack. And this is where it gets so very interesting. Because all this information is not being taught in history books. No. And my question to you is, why do you think it's not being taught in history books? But of course, that's a rhetorical question. I know why. This massacre in history is missing from textbooks. It's the same reason many Western movies made the Indian guys the bad guys. It's the same reason so many women's names don't appear in recorded histories. And the same reason blacks don't write the history books. Native Americans don't, and neither do women. Even if they did, state governments decide which textbooks are used in their school. So back to education. Now do you see? Can you see the link? The government chooses the books that tell the story the way they want it told. Indoctrination. If we don't talk about it, it never happened. Not that we have anything to be ashamed of, mind you. We just can't fit it into every event in the curriculum. Decisions have to be made about what to leave out. It's the same logic that they'll use to teach the African people back in Kenya and such countries, the teachers, to read Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Yes. Now, I don't believe babies are born with a single atom of hatred in their tiny bodies. Anger, yes. I've seen babies get angry when they are hungry or uncomfortable. And I mean, as soon as their needs are met, the anger fades but does not go away. Every baby has a personality of his own from birth. Some are easygoing and sunny, others are mad and demanding. We come into the world as individuals. We have likes and dislikes. We like the taste of some things but not others. We recognize many things and learn quickly how to get what we want. We learn to smile because it seems to please the ones who are taking care of us, or we just get angry and demanding to get what we want. Circumstances have an effect on how we develop, but we started with a basic set of characteristics. Now, hatred is not just one of those original characteristics. Hatred has to be taught. Yes. But personally, I believe love comes naturally. We all love pictures of baby, animals, all those things that make you feel, yeah. Now, if we were not born hating, we must learn it from others. But they had to learn it too. Now, the white citizens of Tulsa, Oklahoma, must have known that the massacre was wrong. And we don't hide things we are proud of. Certainly not all the whites took part in the massacre. Some were probably appalled and recognized the wrongness of it. Some people helped black people escape, but no one came forward to try and rebuild it. The newspapers tried to blame the blacks themselves, but that didn't stand up. So it simply let it fade away. And they let it fade away because it must have seemed like the best plan. Now, some white people even bought land under the rubble to build something of their own, to erase the whole episode. Now, the surviving black citizens of Tulsa suddenly wouldn't dare talk about the episode other than among themselves. Who would listen after that trauma? Not the local or the state government. And the government still denies any culpability. But here's the question. But what when we can simply let things slip away to be forgotten? Now, these days, there are television cameras, news shows, proof that we can all see. We have reached a point now when evidence is everywhere. We have to stop, get out of those lies. You hear many people, oh, I want to do something good. Oh, I'm a just person. Your actions speak louder than your words. Now let's look at how this looks on the world stage. Because the silence around atrocities like Tulsa echoes far beyond American shores. It reveals a deeper, more insidious truth about how the legacy of slavery and racial injustice is managed and often perpetuated. Consider this. In the UK, for instance, up to 2015, British taxpayers were still paying off a massive loan taken out in 1835. Not to compensate the enslaved, but to pay reparations to the slave owners for their loss of property. Yes, slave owners were being paid up to 2015. For nearly 2 centuries, ordinary citizens' taxes went towards enriching the descendants of those who profited from human bondage. That's what it is, human bondage. Even figures like former Prime Minister David Cameron have been linked through their ancestors to families who benefited directly from these substantial compensation payouts. Now, for those skeptics or for those who are stuck in their superiority because it seems like it's their life purpose, let's carry on, because this is where it gets interesting. Contrast that with another pivotal moment in history. Following the horrific atrocities of the Holocaust, Jewish communities and individuals did receive substantial reparations from Germany, acknowledging immense suffering and loss. This was a necessary and just, albeit partial, attempt at restitution for unspeakable crimes. And what does it say about societies that choose to compensate their oppressors while denying or actively suppressing justice and repair for the oppressed? When the costs of a horrific past are borne by the many, while the benefits continue to flow to the few, and true accountability truly remains elusive? I know some of you will be very quick to say, well, they should have rebuilt and... Now for me, the way I see it, Tulsa wasn't the end, it was a blueprint. The destruction of black wealth in Greenwood deepened the racial wealth gap that still exists today. As I've told you, in the UK, we are still paying people who enslaved people who look like me. Neighborhoods were never fully rebuilt in Tulsa. Redlining and segregation followed. Black families who had built legacies were forced into poverty in an instant. The ripple effect, national, it discouraged black home ownership, limited business opportunities, and sent a chilling message to every black person dreaming of economic freedom. Simple. Know your place. Know your place. And this, let's be honest, still goes on today. Whether it's subtle, whether it doesn't matter. Some people you just know, but these days I don't waste my time with people who want to feel they're superior. I have understood, yeah, that's their purpose, so I leave them to it. And today, we still see that racial terror in police violence, in unjust policies, in disparities across every aspect of society. And this is where it becomes even more powerful. Remember when I started this season, I said it's about the faith. Because I strongly believe we're in those times. Pharaoh times. You know who I'm talking about when I say Pharaoh. Pharaoh is going to be brought on his knees, on their knees. So, in moments like this, really, when history weighs heavy and truth feels overwhelming, I find myself returning to faith. Because there's a power that every human can't deny. And I use the baby story about hatred is taught. It really is taught. It's so taught. Love is given freely, but hatred is taught. Now, I return to faith, to story, to spirit. I think of the Israelites in Exodus, in the book of Exodus, a people once enslaved, beaten, broken down, oppressed, yet seen by God. Because truly, let's be honest, if you think about all the massacres, all the enslavement, everything that has happened from slavery, if it was up to just human beings, some of us would be non-existent by now, but we're still thriving, we're still here, we're still laughing, we're still waking up every day. Because God. Now, God didn't forget the Israelites. And I strongly believe He does not forget us. I think, forgive me, this might sound very sensitive to those who've had this impacted in their families. Now I think of the door of no return on the coast of West Africa. The last threshold where most people's ancestors stood. And before that, there were kings and queens with diamonds in their backyards, with cotton flourish, with coffee growing. That's what they were. Teachers, warriors, before being ripped from their land. From there, they were shipped to build empires, not their own, yet despite the chains, they rose. They rose in the fields, they rose in the harsh harbors, in the harbors of land, in the hells of learning. They rose to become scholars. They rose to become artists. They rose to become healers. They rose to become leaders. They rose to build Black Wall Street. And yes, we rise. We rise even after Tulsa. We rise even after slavery. We rise even after oppression. After losing our mothers, we rise. After losing those who are for us, we rise. Just like the Israelites, our journey has not been without wilderness. There have been pharaohs and there have been many pharaohs. There have been floods and there have been Tulsa nights. But the pillar of the still lights our path. We are the dreams of those who came before us. We are the answered prayers of those who passed through the door of no return. So even if, as you and I confront the lies and reckon with the truth, we hold on to the great truth. Justice is sacred. Freedom is ordained. We are not forgotten. Now, the lie that America is a land of equal opportunity, that was shattered by Tulsa. It's not. Not at all. Look at it now. Look at what's happening now in the American politics. I mean, I've stayed away from because I understand the spiritual happenings or implications of what's going on now. So I haven't really, because I'm reading a lot of heavy stuff. So I'm trying to stay away from the heavy stuff. Remember, I'm protecting my peace in the best way I can. Now, the myth of the strong black woman that denies our pain, exposed by generations of unhealed trauma, the silence around black excellence, confronted by every survivor who still stands. We've debunked many lies this season and will continue to do so. But this Tulsa shows us how those lies are protected by silence and fear, and how truth-telling is the first step towards justice. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Please don't let it end here. I hope this can serve as a motivation to go and find out the truth for yourself, to really look at yourself and challenge the narratives you've been fed, you've been indoctrinated to believe about not only yourself, but those around you, about your community. Go and watch the documentaries Tulsa Burning on the History Channel, or Dreamland on CNN, HBO. It's just go, in fact, go to YouTube, just type Tulsa Burning or Tulsa Massacre or The Fire and the Forgotten. Explore these reconstructions of Greenwood from the New York Times and reflect, really truly reflect. What stories have you inherited that need to be examined? What truths are still buried in your community? And how can faith guide your own path to truth and liberation? Now, as we conclude this series of debunking the lies, we will continue to revisit the injustices across many areas. We'll continue to revisit the injustices across education, across health, and many other areas. So please feel free to write. Thank you so much for those who've been writing. Thank you so much for those who've been sending me messages. Sam, not very nice, but yes. The fact that you tune into this podcast is enough for me. As I say, when you're in a public platform, you get the nice, the good, the bad, the ugly. So yes, bring it all. Feel free to email me or comment on what areas you would like to see explored and better understood. I'm happy to do this, very happy to do this. Remember, this is a long-term project. The project is really to get us more empowered to understand our truth, because our truth is really our liberation. I'm now going to return to our core focus, which is resilience for individuals, for businesses. And we're kicking things off with a powerful new episode on how to bounce back from a personal crisis. And this one was requested by Sade. Thank you so much, Sade. I saw that message. We've had a good talk. So stay ready. I'm working on this episode. Until then, remember, we are not what was done to us. No. We are what we choose to become, and we still rise. Remember, I gave you the story of Maya Angelou. Still arise. Go back to that point. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies, but still arise. Does my sassiness offend you? Go back. Listen to it. Use that as your steer. Stay empowered, stay awake, and keep walking towards the light. And I want to thank you so much for listening and for tuning into these episodes. You are support means the world to me. Remember, you hold the pen that writes the chapters of your life. Make your story a brilliant one of truth, one of liberation, and most importantly, one that is empowered. Until next time, bye for now.